You can tell that you're trapped in a story because you feel this sense of urgency. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Like there's this life and death level of urgency. It's inviting you to address it because it's actually holding you back.
This week, I would say, was one of the more mind-blowing experiences reading the blog, just because at first when I was reading it, I was like, okay, I think I get this, but then by the end of it, I was like, whoa, like this is like, this makes so much sense to me. And it's naming an experience that I think so many people have and don't really have the ability to put words to it or even to notice it as an experience that they're having just because they're going through everyday life. This week, we're talking about fighting your story. This thing that you're describing as fighting your story is something that I do all the time. And it's something that just feels normal to me. Like it almost feels like that's just what your mind should be doing. Like I spend so much of my day fighting my story. And so I think to hear you name it like that was just really shocking that, you're not here to stigmatize it or say that it's bad, but you're naming it as this experience that can oftentimes trap you in a place that you don't want to be. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. Exactly. And I'd love to start. I'm kind of curious about what the whoa moment was for you as you were reading the blog, because it sounds like, wow, something happened for you. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was this one line that I had highlighted here. It was most people don't realize just how much energy they spend avoiding the parts of themselves they don't want to claim.
Mm.
And I am one of those people who just doesn't really pay attention to all the energy I put into that. We've been talking about the previous weeks, just all the pieces of us or our stories that we tend to not like. I know for me in particular, I'm thinking about so many different things. I think there's very fundamental parts of my story or very fundamental parts of myself that I oftentimes push against, whether that's being the having the identities that I have. That was a huge part of my childhood, was not wanting to be Latino, not wanting to be gay, not wanting to be from the place that I was from, wherever that was. I think now that I'm an adult, now that I'm older, maybe some of those things have resolved themselves a little bit more. But I'm feeling this just even day to day with everything from like my habits, like the food I consume, the other things I do, how much I exercise or don't exercise, and what that says about me or my ability to pay attention or focus, and the stories I told myself around that, and how much I resist. My mind goes all over the place a lot of the time, and I resist that a lot. And even I think more recently, I've been thinking a lot about my career and the work that I do, and I've spent so long kind of resisting the things that I'm good at just because it doesn't feel prestigious to me or it doesn't feel lucrative to me or worthwhile to me. And I think I'm just now starting to come to a place where I'm like, maybe I should pay attention to these things that I like to do, that I enjoy doing, instead of just kind of pushing past those to get to the thing that I should be doing. So I
Mhm.
think that was a lot, but that was immediately coming up for me when I first heard that line.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And it's interesting. You brought up several points that I think are really important. And one of those is that you didn't even realize you were fighting something because it's our reality, right? It's just our reality. And what I find, and again, I'm always using myself as an example. And I think that's why I can really speak to this on such a deep and intimate level, is because I live it. And I go into this place of deep self-awareness and really kind of get into the depths of the experience. And, I've shared my own story around this, and, just it's crazy. It's almost like it almost feels like a monster chasing you, and you're out trying to outrun it. And, your thoughts and everything you're doing and every decision you're making is like, I just got to get away from this thing. And people are so accustomed to that relationship that they don't even know. I mean, it's their normal. They just think that, like you said, it's like, I just thought this is the way this is my normal. This is just the way, I kind of move through life, and this is what life is about. And most of us are doing that until we stop and really, really sit with what's happening with us. And then we realize, oh my gosh, I'm running from this thing, or I'm avoiding this thing, or I don't want to deal with this thing, or I'm resisting what I believe about myself, or I'm trying to make it not true. And that there's a lot of energy that we expend in relationship to that thing, if that makes sense.
Definitely, definitely. And, I would love to hear a little bit more about what that has looked like for you. You start the piece talking about your relationship to money, which you've talked a lot
Hmm.
about in this series, and your relationship to like work and your social life. And I think something that was really interesting to me about what you had shared too is just the huge amount of loneliness that you were feeling when you were fighting these stories all the time, which is something that I
Hmm.
can definitely relate to. I mean, I think for me, when I'm in this place where I'm fighting against these parts of myself or fighting against these stories, I'm usually alone, like physically alone.
Hmm.
I'm usually like in my head, like I can feel these thoughts happening like right here. And I never really reach a place where I feel like I've won or I've succeeded in these thoughts. So I guess that's all to say. I'm curious, given that that's my experience, like what that's been like for you and what kind of pushed you to write this piece.
Something that just literally went through my mind as we're having this conversation is, I've been one of these people that have had lots of nightmares. And, I always attributed my nightmares to my trauma. Well, as you and I are having this conversation right now, it was like, oh my God, I just made a connection just as we're talking. And I always have these nightmares where somebody's chasing me.
Hmm.
It's either somebody's chasing me, and I mean, this is a life or death matter. They've got a gun or something, and it's really dramatic, and I have all this anxiety. It's either that, or it's something like I'm late for something, and even though I'm late, it doesn't. It's like I've got all this anxiety about being late, but I never seem to get my ass going. It's still like I'm still kind of dawdling, but I'm late and I have this anxiety. And I'm just realizing in this moment is like, oh my God, in my dreams, it's metaphorically showing up this idea of how we run, how we're running from things. Like we feel like we're being chased. I think about where I am in life, and, I can think about like in the last 5 years, for example, I have friends that I perceive. This is a story I'm telling myself. I perceive them as more successful than I am. And the way that I measure that is by one, how much money they're making, two, how lavish their lives are. Like I'm thinking about two women in particular that are always on vacation. And I'm not exaggerating. Like they've got to be taking a vacation a month. And we're not talking about, a quick trip to Branson, Missouri, or, Santa Barbara. We're talking Antarctica, Japan, Africa, and we all know that those are very luxurious, expensive trips. And, I was making up this story about how I was failing, like I was not as successful as they were. It was creating this inner dynamic where the best way to describe this is I didn't want to make it true. Like what I was really, quite frankly, what I was running from was my fear of not being enough. At the end of the day, if I'm to look at the core, is not only am I not enough, but because I'm not enough, I don't belong. I don't belong here. Like I shouldn't be hanging out with these people because these people are more successful than I am. They have better lives than I do. And, I'm like an imposter, like I'm a fraud. I shouldn't be here. And so what's getting kicked up for me is the story that I'm not enough, right? But here's the thing. I don't want to believe, I don't want to give into that story. That's what I'm running from. So the thing that I'm running from and the thing that I want to disown is this feeling of not belonging and not being enough. So what am I doing instead? I'm running from that, and I'm focusing on things like, well, why don't I get to have those things? Like why are they so lucky that these get these things and I'm not getting these things? Or maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm not working hard enough, or, maybe I don't have the answer. Maybe I haven't figured this out. Maybe they figured something out that I didn't figure out. And really, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is to get away from the discomfort or any confirmation of this fear that I have that I'm not good enough. And then because I'm not good enough, I don't belong in this social circle, to running away from that to try to um, fix it. And trying to fix it is, well, how do I make more money? Or what am I doing wrong? How do I fix this? What do they know that I don't know? And here's the crazy part is I'm trying to get away from the story. I'm trying to get away from the discomfort of not feeling enough. The irony is I keep going back to it. Does that make
Mm.
sense? I mean, it just takes me back. So it's like being on this merry-go-round. It's like, okay, I don't want to feel this. And so I'm going to go into this place over here about how do I make it go away? And just the focusing on trying to make it go away brings me right back to it. And it's almost like my dream. I'm being chased over and I just can't escape it. And so I realized that. And I also realized that I believe, based on conversations that you and I've had, based on conversations that I've had with clients, is this is a universal theme. I'm not saying everybody has this, but it's a very common theme. And it's a very common intra dynamic. And that is, I don't like this. I need to get away from it. Let me figure out how to disown it or get rid of it. And the fact that I'm trying to get rid of it actually creates all this energy that pulls me right back into it. You follow me on that?
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, it's that we can have this uncomfortable feeling or this uncomfortable thought. Maybe it's I'm not enough, or I've failed, or I don't belong, whatever that is. And instead of trying to sit with that feeling or learn from it, we kind of go into this place of trying to battle it. And the way we battle it is focusing on these maybe more surface level things or material things like how could I work harder? How can I make more money? How could I be more successful? Thinking that fighting those battles are going to be the thing that alleviates that feeling of not being good enough, even if we can't name it as not being good enough. That's like that feeling. And
Right.
what you're saying is, in engaging with that fight, we kind of are almost giving more power to that feeling of not being
Mhm.
good enough. We're giving truth to that story. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Exactly. So basically, we're being held hostage by the very thing we're trying to escape.
Wow. Wow. And why, like, you said that this is something you've experienced as almost like a universal feeling or something that's more widespread. It's not just you, it's not just me that's experiencing this. Why would you say it is that this is a common response to these feelings of not being good enough, not belonging, which are very fundamental, common human experiences, I would say? Why is it that we often turn to things like, in your case, I need to make more money, I need to work harder? I think this goes back to previous conversations too, about like, I need to hustle more. Um, I guess I'm curious, like, why that emerges as this dynamic and what that does to uh, reaffirm the power of those stories.
Right. Yeah. Well, if we're really to get to the origin in this origin of these stories and the fact that they seem to be so universal, what we need to do is we actually need to go back to development and childhood. We really do need to go back there because what happens is, when we come into the world and we are who we are, we learn very quickly. We learn very quickly as children and typically through our caretakers' reactions to our behavior is usually at the core of these kinds of struggles. And I want to make this really clear. This isn't about finding fault. This isn't about finding bad guys. It's really just understanding how these things develop. And so many of us can understand this. Many of us have had these experiences that we're being kids and we're just being who we are. And our parents are very unhappy with us. And
Hmm.
so what we are doing in that moment, we're going, uh-oh, this isn't okay. And not only is this not okay, I'm not okay. And not only am I not okay, my parents aren't going to love me and take care of me. So I got to fix this not okayness. And I've got to do the thing that's going to make me okay. So we start to get messages as we're growing up that who we are is not okay because of the way people react to us. And again, I go back to this whole idea that we're wired for survival. If we're not accepted, if we're going to get kicked out of the tribe, we're going to starve to death and die, right? That's what our primitive brain is telling us. And so because we are tribal, because we are pack animals, if we're not being accepted, that is very threatening. And so we say to ourselves, "Oh, this is not ideal. This is not okay. I got to get rid of it. I got to get rid of it." And so we run from it. And so, like, you started the conversation off today about recognizing very early on that there were things that you didn't like about yourself. You didn't want to be Latino. You didn't want to be brown. You didn't want to live where you lived. You didn't want to be gay. Well, I'm willing to bet money that the reasons you felt those things is because somewhere in your environment, somebody or multiple somebodies showed you with their reactions that those things were not acceptable. This is where that urgency comes from. Again, like I
Mm.
was talking about my nightmares. I mean, these nightmares were creating a lot of anxiety. Sometimes they would wake me up out of a dead sleep, and there was this sense of life or death. There was a sense of urgency, and there was also this sense of like I couldn't get away. I couldn't escape it. It was still chasing me, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get away. And I feel like that's a great metaphor for our relationship to these things about ourselves that we are afraid are not acceptable and that we are trying to run from. And we get engaged in this cycle of running from it. But it's kind of like a cat with its tail. It can run from its tail. It's never gonna. The tail's gonna still be there. That's what happens for us, is that we can run from it, but it's always going to be there, and it's going to create not only a lot of angst, but you're going to be expending a lot of energy trying
Mm.
to escape something that you cannot escape. It's there. It's who you are. You can't escape it.
Mm. It's what I'm hearing from you is like you can't escape it. It's there is some level of like acceptance that is
Mm-hmm.
needed for this, and I'm sure that that's probably part of the way that you get out of this. And I definitely want to hear more about that. But it sounds a little simple and also a little radical at the same time, that you just like you kind of just need to accept that this is what it is and just take it as it is. Like maybe in your case it's I am not making the money that I wish I were. I'm not traveling like my friends are. For me, maybe it's I don't look the way I wish I did, or I'm not perceived the way I wish I were. And that there's some element of acceptance that's required to even begin to move forward with this, rather than expending the energy to make more money, look a different way, whatever that might be. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I would like to add to it too, because it really has a lot to do with where the motivation is coming from. So, for example, there's nothing wrong with making lots of money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make lots of money, because when we really look at this, money is a tool to get us the things and experiences that we want, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's when it becomes a vehicle for proving something, or from us trying to get away from something that is, like trying to escape our own story.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it becomes problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you follow me on that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm thinking about myself right now and just what I've been kind of experiencing these past couple like weeks and months, and I think this is really relevant and really resonant to what I've been going through. Right now I'm in this phase where I'm, in my mid to like starting to become late 20s. I'm 26. So I'm still really early in my career, but I'm also starting to turn the page, I think, of that kind of first era of your career when you're fresh out of college and like just trying to try new things on. And now it's like, okay, not now, what do I do? Like, now I need to start thinking about maybe the long term and,
Hmm.
growing. And I'm in this place now where I'm trying to launch a lot of my own ventures. I'm launching my own creative studio, and I've been doing some community events here in Los Angeles, and I've been writing a lot more and doing a lot of my own art practice. And I've really been enjoying that, but I've been struggling to figure out the balance of it all, how I do it all, how do I find meaning out of all of it. I was even just today at a coffee shop just trying to figure out like and map everything together. And I've been so hyper focused on making things fit, making things make sense, finding the right schedule to fit all that into my life,
Hmm.
that I think sometimes I don't hear the voice in my head that's maybe motivating a lot of those things. And a lot that voice, I think when I really listen to it, is a feeling of like you not being enough. I tell myself that, I'm not as successful as I'd like to be right now. I'm not as um like respected as I'd like to be right now. I'm not as rich as I'd like to be right now. Uh, and I think for me in particular, I just grew up really being praised for those things as a child. I grew up and I was always thought of as like, oh, he's going to be successful. He's going to do these things. He's going to be really powerful. And I think right now I'm living kind of in the shadow of that, where it's like, what if I'm not those things? What if I don't achieve any of those things I thought I was going to achieve? And I know I'm still very young, and whenever I tell people this, like, "Oh my God, you're 26," it's not that big of a deal right now. But I know that that's the story that I think I'm carrying with me throughout all that. And when I'm doing all that meticulous planning, I feel like maybe that's something that I'm trying to run away from by doing all that work.
Right. And it sounds like what you're running from is the fear that you aren't going to be those things, right? That when I hear you talk about it, and this is how you can tell, this is how you can tell that you're trapped in a story. You can tell that you're trapped in a story because you feel this sense of urgency. Like this sounds like an exaggeration, but for most of us, we can relate to this. There's almost this component of, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like there's this life and death level of urgency. That is how you know you're running from something, that you're running
Mm,
from a story. And so, what's the alternative? Well, first of all, I want to make this really clear. You're not going to get anywhere by ignoring the story, because
mm,
guess what? This part of you wants your attention. Why does it want your attention? It wants your attention because it's inviting you to address it, because it's actually holding you back. What I want to talk about is this idea of contrast. So I find that we as humans, this is one of our ways that we learn. And contrast means that we have experiences that are opposing, like they're antithetical to one another. So, I think about my last year, for example, and I think about times like in the last 6 months, for example, that I have been in this place of urgency and fear and this fear of failure, and I felt the hustle, and I felt the urgency that somehow my very survival is being threatened, and I've been in that energy. And when I'm in that place, what I'm very aware of is that there's something right here that I'm trying to get away from. Okay,
mm,
like I'm running away from something. Like there's this reality that I don't want to face. And so what I'm doing instead is I'm hustling. Okay, I just got to make this happen. I just got to make this happen. I just got to make this happen. And I'm focusing on that instead of paying attention to, well, what's driving me? Like why? What's the why? What's the motivation? And so I had this experience, I would say, up until about June. Now let's do the contrast. The contrast was last year, when I've said many times, God, this was the best year of my life. Well, why was it the best year of my life? Because I wasn't operating from a place of fear. I
mm,
wasn't running from anything. The not enough stuff wasn't happening for me. What was happening instead? I was full in to this idea of just pure creative expression, just finding the things that I love. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I'm having really a good time doing this. This is really fun. I'm getting the creative juices are flowing. Well, why were those two places different? The place that I just described, which was like amazing and, very expansive and creative, basically the fundamental differences between these two places was this place. I was in complete trust.
Hmm.
And let me tell you what I mean by that. I wasn't worried about money. I thought money's going to come. I'm going to do this. I'm having a great time. I love this. I feel like I'm closer to myself. I love all this creative expression. This is who I am. And I wasn't thinking about it, because it was like, it was almost like it's like the sun coming up. We don't think about, oh my God, is the sun going to come up? But what if it doesn't come up? No, it just comes up and we trust it. In some ways, that's what was happening for me. I was in complete trust. And then when things ended the way they did, which was I had these arbitrary goals, I had my eye on this horizon that this is where I wanted to get. I didn't get there. And nothing else changed, just this one thing, this one bar of this is where I need to be. When that didn't happen, everything crumbled. And
Hmm.
I went right into this place of urgency. Oh my God, failure. I'm not enough. I got to hustle. I got to prove to myself, to everybody else, that I'm successful, whatever that means. And it was that simple. Just that little thing changed my entire reality.
Hmm. Wow. I think that's really resonates with me, and it's, I think, validating to hear that you found that place of trust and freedom, and even still being in it and living that great year, like, just it could snap like that. I mean, I'm sorry that that happened for you, but also I think it's validating just because sometimes I feel that fragile. Like, there's moments where I do have that trust, and we talk a lot, like, in, especially among like Gen Z people, and like in the creative fields, they talk about that you need to be like delusional to some sense, meaning like you just need to like think it's going to happen, just like be delusional that it's going to happen. That's the only way for it to actually happen. And so maybe, it could be delusion, it could be trust, whatever you're saying, but it can it can be revoked. Like, something like not making enough money can suddenly put you back into that place.
Mhm.
So I think it's nice to hear that you're not just gonna like achieve trust. You're not just gonna like arrive at that place and you're done. Like, it's a constant practice, is what I'm hearing from you.
Exactly. I've fallen into this as well, is that, we have this really weird idea that we're going to make it somewhere. Like it's a destination, like it's a final destination on some map. And it's like, okay, when I get here, everything's going to be just perfect and wonderful. And that place doesn't exist. It is a constant practice. And, our growing and evolving and becoming better versions of ourselves, quite frankly, this is the dance. The dance is, some people talk about this from this perspective, is that life is about um, uh, waking up to yourself and falling asleep to yourself, waking up to yourself and falling asleep to yourself, that is a constant in motion experience as a human being. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, what that means exactly is that there's going to be times in our lives where it could be flickers of moments, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years, where we're in this state where we are truly in, our true being and our essence. And we know we're there because there's a flow, there's an ease, there's a sense of trust. You're not worried, and you're just in the zone. You're like in the zone of, whatever it is, whatever your zone of genius is, you're in it and everything feels great. And then there's going to be moments where you're going to look up and go, fuck, shit, uh-oh, I didn't, like me, I'm laughing at myself because it's like, I was focusing on one thing, just one thing. And that one thing was the dollar amount that I wanted to make in 2024 did not happen. I'm not destitute. I'm not hungry. I'm not living under a bridge. But because I didn't make that mark, everything collapsed. And now I laugh at myself because it's like, okay, wait, Charleanea, what happened to all this stuff that you
Hmm.
experienced? That didn't go away. And what I want to make really clear is whether we're in nirvana or hell isn't something that happens outside of us. We create this ourselves by the stories that we're making up completely.